Good morning. I'm a little late getting started this morning. I came out here and got all set up to do my reading here, and I forgot my thinking cap. So I had to run back in the house and get my thinking cap. Can't read without thinking. Can't read without drinking coffee either. So today, from Light and Truth by Horatius Bonar, this particular chapter is called The Doom of the Double-Hearted. So first I'm going to start with reading Numbers 31, 1 through 8. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Avenge the people of Israel on the Midianites. Afterwards you shall be gathered to your people. So Moses spoke to the people, saying, Arm men from among you for the war, that they may go against Midian to execute the Lord's vengeance on Midian. You shall send 1,000 men from each of the tribes of Israel to the war. So there were provided out of the thousands of Israel 1,000 from each tribe, 12,000 armed for war. And Moses sent them to the war, 1,000 from each tribe, together with Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, with the vessels of the sanctuary and the trumpets for the alarm in his hand. They warred against Midian, as the Lord commanded Moses, and killed every male. They killed the kings of Midian with the rest of the slain, Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba, the 5 kings of Midian. And they also killed Balaam, the son of Beor, with the sword. Well, Balaam had taken the field against Israel, against the people whom he had pronounced blessed. You remember that. Whom he had pronounced invincible, both by earth and hell. Yes, Balaam, the son of Beor. He and not another of the same name. He rushes on the bosses of the Almighty's buckler, on his shield. He defies Israel, and he defies Israel God. What a blunder. But he fails. Of course he fails. He would gladly have cursed Israel, but he couldn't. He counseled Moab to seduce Israel by temptation, and his device succeeded well and cost the lives of thousands. And he now fetches his last stroke in vain. He perishes ignobly. He is slain with the sword which he had defied. Such is the end of the backslider. Such is the end of the one who knew the truth but did it not, who once said, Let me die the death of the righteous, and let my last end be like his. Well, it was certainly not the end he prayed for, yet it was the end to which his whole life had been tending. He reaped what he sowed, and in him God was not mocked. He died as he lived, in fellowship with Moab, yet in heart persuaded that Israel was the beloved of the Lord, and that Jehovah was God. It just wasn't his God. His life had been with Midian, and so was his death. His grave is with the unclean. He passes from earth with none to soothe his deathbed and close his eyes, none to lament for him or to build his monument. Sad end of a life of halting and indecision and resistance of the spirit, and going against the conscience, and rejection of light, and wretched covetousness. He loved the wages of unrighteousness, and verily he had his reward. Let us see what he wanted and how he failed, how ambitious he was, yet what a life of utter failure and disappointment was his. He'd gladly have risen, but he sunk. He would gladly have been rich, but he lost everything. What a wasted life, yet the life of one who knew better things, but did them not, who knew that the world was vanity, yet followed it, who knew that Israel's portion was the best, yet chose that of Moab, who knew the true God and the true Messiah, but preferred the idolatries of Israel's enemies. He saw him. He saw him from the top of the rocks, but that was all. He got a passing glimpse of the cross, but no more. It was all he saw of the way of life before he plunged into death and woe. Yes, he wanted to serve two masters. These were the same as the Lord in after days designated God and Mammon. He wanted not to offend either. He wanted to please both. He was like Issachar, crouching between two burdens, but it would not do. He failed. Such is a certain failure of all who make the like attempt. You can't serve God and Mammon. He loved the one master, Mammon, and he dreaded the other, but would gladly do the will of both. He couldn't afford to lose the favor of either. What a miserable life. What a more miserable death. The life and death of one whose whole career was one long attempt to do the bidding both of God and the devil. What was it he wanted? Well, he wanted to earn two kinds of wages. The wages of righteousness and the wages of unrighteousness. They were both in his eyes. He'd gladly have the pay of both God and the devil. He was unwilling to do or say anything which would deprive him of either. He was as cautious and as cunning as he was covetous. He'd not work without wages, and he would work for 100 masters if they would pay him well. How like so many so-called religious men amongst ourselves. He wanted to do two opposite things at the same time. He wished both to bless and to curse. He was willing to do either according as it might serve his interests. The only question with him was, would it pay? If the blessing would pay, he'd take it. If the curse would pay, he'd take it. If both would pay, he'd have them both. Blessing and cursing, they were both alike to him, confessing and denying the true God, worshiping Baal or Jehovah. It mattered not, if by craft he could have his wealth. So with many among us, if Sabbath keeping will pay, they'll keep the Sabbath. If Sabbath breaking will pay, they'll break the Sabbath. True Balaams without principle, without faith, and without fear. He wanted two kinds of friendship. He'd gladly be friends with everybody. Perhaps he was timid of those who Scripture calls fearful. Perhaps also he was ambitious and sought great things for himself wherever those could be obtained. Certainly he had before him the fear of man which bringeth a snare, and the love of man's approbation which brings no less a snare. He dreaded Israel's God, of whom he knew much, but he dreaded also Moab's gods, though whether he really believed in them, we don't know. But made up of these contradictions and acting not by faith but unbelief, he tried to secure the friendship of all whom he counted great, whether in heaven or in earth. He shut his eyes not only to the sin, but to the impossibility of such a course. He saw not the friendship of the world is the enemy of God, and that whosoever will be the friend of the world must be the enemy of God. He didn't see that. He wanted to have two religions. He saw religion to be a paying concern, a profitable trade. He was willing to accept it from anybody or everybody, to adopt it from any quarter if it would but raise him in the world and make his fortune. Perhaps he thought all religions equally right or equally wrong, equally true or equally false. He'd rather not offend any god if he could help it. He would make concessions to religious prejudices. Easy for you to say. Sorry, folks. He would make concessions to religious prejudices of any kind if the prejudiced people will only help him on. He was like Erasmus of old, whom a German writer thus describes. Erasmus belongs to that species of writers who have all the desire to build God a magnificent church, at the same time, however, not giving the devil any offense, to whom accordingly they set up a neat little chapel close by where you can offer him some touch of sacrifice at a time and practice a quiet household devotion for him without disturbance. Such was Balaam. 2 gods, 2 religions he wanted to have. But this double service and double friendship and double religion would not do. He could make nothing by them. They profited him nothing, either in this life or that to come. His end was with the ungodly, his portion with the enemies of Israel, and his soul, where could it be? Not with Israel's God, not with Israel's Christ, or in Israel's heaven. He reaped what he sowed, and so shall we all. He was a good specimen of multitudes in these last days. He was an educated, an intelligent man, shrewd and quick-seeing, of respectable character, high in favor with the rich and great. A religious man, too, after a fashion, not unsound in creed so far, for he acknowledges Jehovah as a true God, but he is fond of the world, fond of money, fond of preferment, one that would not let his religion stand in the way of his advancement, who could pocket all scruples if he could pocket a little gold along with him. Hollow of heart, but with a fair outside, just as Erasmus. He was no Luther, he was no Calvin, certainly no Knox, no confessor, no martyr. His worldly interests are the main thing to him. He'd rather not risk offending God, but yet he would not like to lose Balak's rewards and honors. He'd rather not take up his cross, nor deny himself, nor forsake all for his God. Religion with him is not just a thing to be suffered for, at least if he can help it. So is it with multitudes among us. They want as much religion as will save them from hell, not a bit, not a tiny atom more. The world is their real God. Gold is their idol. It is in Mammon's temple that they worship. Love God with all your heart. Don't do so much as understand the meaning of such a thing. Sacrifice riches. Sacrifice place, honor, friends to Christ, for Christ. They scoff at that kind of thing as madness. Oh, be on the side of God. Out and out for God. Don't trifle with religion. Don't mock God and Christ. Love not the world. Be religious in your inmost soul. Don't mistake sentimentalism for religion or a good character for the new birth. You may go very far and yet not be a Christian. You may follow Christ in some things, but if not in all, what is your following worth? This world, or the world to come. That is the alternative. Not this world and the world to come. Christ, all or nothing. The soul, more precious than worlds, or utterly worthless. No middle ground. No half discipleship, no compromise. No, the friendship of the world is enmity with God. Come out ye and be separate. The new birth, or no religion at all. Look to thy latter end. What's it to be? Where is it to be? With whom is it to be? Anticipate thy eternity. Is it to be darkness or light, shame or glory? Make sure. Oh, my friend, make sure. Don't sear your conscience by praying Balaam's prayer. Let me die the death of the righteous. What'll that avail you? It is the life of the righteous that God is calling you to lead, and he'll take care of your death. Decide, halt not, else surely yours will be a wretched life and a still more wretched death. What'll gold or purple or honor do for you when you lie down to die or rise up to be judged? Friends, enemies, whoever you are. I have friends and I have enemies. I have fellow pilgrims and I have brothers and sisters. I know a few people. Whoever you are, if you're following Christ, keep following him. Stay close to him. If you're not, find your way. Pray. Sit down. If you've never read the Bible before, start with the book of John. Read that whole book. Read the whole Bible. Commit your life to reading some of that Bible every day of your life. Live the life. Live the life. Live the life of Christ. Seek Jesus. Live for Jesus. God bless, brothers and sisters. Have a great day.